Welcome to the Ellevate podcast, conversations with women changing the face of business. And now your hosts, Kristy, Wallace, and Maricella, Herrera.
Hello and welcome to the Ellevate podcast. This is your host, Kristy Wallace, with my co-host, Maricella, Herrera. Maricella, how are you doing?
Hey, Kristy. I'm doing okay.
I have to tell you, you were on fire yesterday. You were moderating or emceeing one of Ellevate's allyship event in lead up to Mobilize Women Week, and you were amazing.
Thank you.
You're quite the hostess.
Thank you. It was fun. It's such a, I'm completely biased when it comes to Mobilize Women because I think it's such an important event that we do, and I'm excited for us to be hosting it virtual in August this year. But it was great to kick off the promotion of this event and to kick off the conversations, which are important conversations around equity, around justice, about race and anti-racism, and about really how do we come together to make the world what we want it to be. So it was really, really great to have our speakers yesterday, to be able to open up the event and MC. And a little silly, but also I think it was the first time in more than 2 months that I actually had my hair down and was wearing makeup. It actually made a difference in my mood. I'm pretty sure it did.
So I'll say it does make a difference, at least for me as well. But then I overthink it because, of course, I'm like, is this some societal brainwashing that I feel good if I've got makeup on? But I think it's just doing something for yourself, any type of self-care, whatever it is, and giving a little bit extra attention to yourself.
I agree. And I also think it's part of like ritual in a way. Like for me, it was like, oh, it's been so long since I've gone to an event. And we used to do we are doing tons of events online, but I don't know, having that mentality of like, let me get ready and let me, wake up and do this thing that I used to do every single day. And I haven't done in so long. I don't know. It was good.
Yeah. No, I like it. Well, you did a great job, and it's a great lead-in to our guest this week, Hayley Sudbury, who is the founder and CEO of Werkin, and it's Hayley's mission to really change the nature of the workplace and to close the gap in mentoring and sponsorships, particularly for underrepresented talent. She is having a huge impact, and it's important that we continue to tell these stories of different ways in which our community and, the broader world are looking to create systemic change. I think oftentimes it feels like it's one solution or one way forward, and it's not. There's a diversity of thought, diversity of perspective, and all of the ways in which individuals are taking leadership or creating innovation and are tackling these problems will help to move us forward. And so from the event last evening to the podcast today with Hayley, I just am inspired by the progress, about the impact that people are having.
Yeah, it's so powerful. Like you said, both the innovation of how people are addressing the changes and addressing the problems that we need to fix. And also from the event yesterday, how it has to be every single one of us who are opening, Stacey Flowers said this, who are like letting our hearts break and letting our hearts open so that we can actually create a change. And hearing these stories, hearing this commitment from people who are doing that, who are putting themselves out there, who are creating change in the world, it helps us get more inspired and helps kind of drive that change of heart and change of mind. It's exciting.
Well, Stacey was a speaker at our Mobilize Women 2019. So if you want to check out the video at ellevatenetwork.com, go right ahead. Stacey was also a guest on the Ellevate podcast. So check out some of our archives so you can hear my conversation with Stacey. And before we get to this great conversation with Hayley, Maricella, this is a big time for us at Ellevate. It's one of our favorite times of the year. Mobilize women as well as squads. Squads are opening. Do you want to share a little bit what squads are all about?
Sure. So our squads program is a 12-week program where we group the people in our community into small cohorts, and they meet weekly through a video conference and discuss topics and focus really on each of their own like individual problems or individual challenges they're facing or goals they want to achieve, and get feedback, mentoring, advice, and most importantly of all, get different perspectives from other people. And it's really an incredibly powerful way to see, get new ideas, get more innovative ideas. I think about 80% of the women who participated in squads say they were more confident after doing the program. We run them a few times each year. This is the last time we're running it in 2020. So it's your last chance to apply for a 2020 squad. And I highly recommend. Applications will be open through July 15th.
All right. So listeners, lots of great stuff for you this week. Please check out squads. We're talking about the ways that we all have an impact in this world. Squads is a great way for you to not only invest in yourself and your career, but to give back to others and to expose yourself to other perspectives and ideas. We're super proud of what we've done with squads, and we want you to partake in that. So go to EllevateNetwork.com to learn more. We also have Mobilize Women Week coming up, the week of August 24th to 28th. Go to Ellevate Network to see the full lineup and to learn more. And now let's get to my conversation with Hayley. Hi, Hayley. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Ellevate podcast. It's wonderful to have you here.
Thanks for having me. I'm delighted to finally get to meet you.
I know. I've been looking forward to this conversation. I cannot wait to see where it takes us. But I wanted to start with a little bit more about you. If you wouldn't mind sharing with our listeners a bit more about who you are and how you got to where you are today.
Happy to. And I'm sure, a lot of listeners, I probably had a pretty similar early career journey. So I started off very much in, the corporate world with a real focus actually on career development. I worked in the energy sector, really around looking at how you could look at new revenue streams for the sector as it was deregulating, and that was in Queensland in Australia in the early noughties. And so it was a fantastic, foundation for a career in what later became innovation and building and creating new things. I later moved into really financial services where, to be honest, it was quite a strategic move. And I think as what Ellevate is all about, it's very much around empowering women and getting them paid more and getting them to a place where they can invest more. And I became quite clear that financial services was certainly an industry where there was huge opportunity and a huge opportunity for me to grow professionally, but also improve my earning capacity. So I moved into financial services with kind of really a product development lens in what I was doing. And then eventually found myself moving into more general management positions there, supporting back office functions, looking at offshoring for, better commercials. Found myself not just working in Australia at that time, as you would hear from my accent. I am Australian, and that's kind of where I started this fabulous kind of career journey. But really my move into financial services allowed me to also work in Asia more broadly. And then I did some specific work in India, particularly around the early offshoring work I was doing for, at that point, ANZ Bank, which was kind of, a fantastic time in my career. I then later moved to the UK and, continued to move up through financial services and found myself working on really the balance sheet side of things and heading up liquidity and looking at different ways we could price essentially cash to, get banks to a point where they could actually be able to lend more. It was a time when the financial crisis had happened, or I think they called it the Great Recession here in the US. and looking at how we attracted balances to build a very large balance sheet. And at that point, we were successful in getting the balance sheet for Commercial Bank above $50 billion. And, for me, that was a great time, a huge stretch challenge. I really loved my journey in financial services. However, I was starting to look around and think about, what was next for me. And I was looking for kind of that version of myself. At that time, I was really also sort of struggling with my sexuality and coming out. And I guess, as part of that, of having a great career run, I was looking for, where are these fabulous, gay women? But actually bigger than that, the question was also like, where are these women? Where are they in this organization? And, I couldn't really point to those senior women above me, or I certainly couldn't point to at that point, those senior gay women. And so, for me, I actually at that point decided to leave financial services and start to go on a little bit more of an epic adventure with kind of an entrepreneurial kind of lens, and start to build technology and look at how we could build technology that could actually help transform someone's career. And as I thought about, this lack of kind of women at the top, we thought about, why is that the case? And essentially started to build a company, which is now Werkin, to help really accelerate women, through organizations to get them, into these more senior positions, and looking at how do we help, senior leaders and managers actively support women on this journey. And, we do that through our mentoring career development programs, which ultimately use tech to help make women more visible, and also help senior leaders and managers do something to support their career. And I think that is very much kind of the short story, kind of moving from, I guess, the corporate world to what I do now. But essentially it was, it was a great journey. I really saw some gaps. It was a personal experience, for me, around not seeing this version of myself, and looking at, how can I change that? What's sort of in my power to do that? And I think many of these things create change. And for me, it's been fantastic to focus all of my energy on helping create this change, and I think help organizations be, I guess, a better version of themselves.
So much of your story resonates with me personally, and I'm sure our guests as well. We oftentimes, I think, go into our careers thinking it's going to be this straight line, and it's not. You're switching functions, industries, geographies. How did you retain a network or community, or were you able to during that time?
I think, really your network is hugely important. And I think we sort of all intrinsically know that, but investing in it is super key. And, for me, I am, absolutely a people person. I love making connections. I love investing in the connections. And in fact, I would say if you ever have plans to build anything and leave your current kind of corporate setup, those connections are really important, because how you've developed them and the depth of that relationship really lends itself to something more once you leave that firm. And it's something I see actually time and time again, where someone's stepping out even to an entrepreneurial venture, and they're working for a big organization, and everyone's picking up the phone because they want to do business with the big organization, for example, not the individual. And because of that, it is always going to come down to the quality of that personal relationship, not what the person thinks of the firm you work for. But if you have that decent connection on a personal level where it is authentic, you have provided some value, you have, done that favor. Essentially, that is something that you can draw on, I think, essentially when the time is right, and that feels very real and natural. So I guess for me, I think I love people. I love building it. I feel like that's always been very easy for me, but I've made sure I've basically always checked in with people who've been on my journey as well, and looked to not just be the person asking for something, but to be the person who is giving, to be of service, which I think essentially creates a very different relationship rather than one of just sort of pure value exchange. And if that's your approach to, I guess, life and relationships, it allows you to manage a network in a way that is one that you can really tap into when you do need that help to get you to the next place.
I couldn't agree more. Yes, absolutely. You talked about how you didn't see those that quote unquote looked like you at the top, women and gay women, and specifically, and that you took action to change that. You know, obviously we know that is not the world we want to see or the businesses we want to see. And I'm inspired around your action to change the, current landscape and to really disrupt it in new ways. Could you talk more about the work you're doing around raising visibility for underrepresented talent and how you really see technology being a key driver of that?
Yep, absolutely. I mean, I think, a lot of companies are running a lot of different programs, which is great. And, my position on this is what we're doing, what we have, what we continue to build isn't even necessarily about replacing anything. It's always about, amplifying and accelerating and looking at how we can kind of, work together with even what exists or where there's a gap. But really, our approach in the technology we have built, there's kind of really two key foundations to it. One, it really changes who senior leaders and managers are seeing. So where there's a big gap, particularly in large organizations, is it's very hard to get visibility by the right people that can help, really make a difference to your career. We all know that's hugely important. And then two, we really look at the action that senior leader or manager can do for that individual as well. So it's great that they're seeing that person so we can serve them up in a way where we actually get them, we get that, high potential young women of color who's also an engineer who's new to the firm. We can profile her and get her up right into the senior levels through technology. But that's only as good as, you cement an idea in a head about, that leader has actually managed to see someone, but it doesn't make any difference unless that person say he does something for her. So the idea of then nudging that leader with a small action, which can actually help change the visibility of that person and at, broader levels across the firm and give her a real opportunity to grow is what starts to make a real difference. So essentially technology can give you really the scale of these opportunities compared to where they often happen in very tiny pockets of an organization. So really, our approach at Werkin has been to look at how do we create more of this visibility? How do we create more of these opportunities for these populations who are not as visible, who are not proactively supported at scale to really start to shift the dial on what someone's, personal career experience is inside an organization. Now, the way we started was simply around the idea of mentoring because companies have mentoring programs. And I think intrinsically people understand what a mentoring program is and they get what it means to have a mentor. So we really did hinge the idea when we first built the company very much around the idea of mentoring. And so, we talk to companies around, hey, look, we are going to help, your leaders, your managers, your people be better mentors, but not just mentors. We're going to help them be these active sponsors of your diverse talent. And by doing that, we're getting them to do things that they have all of this fantastic intention to do, but often don't get around to. So that's kind of the other bit that we found was missing is, we were seeing, companies run the most extraordinary and fantastic marketing campaigns, which are so important for creating awareness. However, that doesn't always translate into very real action, which is then, say, measurable inside an organization. So how do you then say, look, we've got the support because we've got this marketing campaign, but then what's the real action? So by having nudges built into the technology, which help these senior leaders kind of turn that intention and that great support into real action, not only can we demonstrate that actually management is doing things to support talent, more importantly, we're just helping them do the things they actually said they would do and want to do, but maybe have been busy or distracted or haven't gotten around to it. So this idea of how do you make it just really easy to turn the intention and so much intention around when it comes to diversity inclusion, turning that intention into real action. And simply that's what we do at Werkin. We change the visibility and then we promote the action and make it really easy for that to happen. And then you can look at what's happening on the programs to get a sense really of what's working, also what's not working, and have some very honest conversations about who's in the organization, how are you supporting them, are you actually moving some of this stuff forward?
when you work with companies, are they, and this might be kind of an easy question, I guess, but, you find they really are committed to finding that balance?
Yeah, I think they are. And I think that has been quite a recent step change where really it's been about understanding it. Like I think the first, there's a few waves that all of this change has been happening in. And, the first wave was like, wow, we've got a problem. There's data here that tells us these organizations aren't necessarily balanced. Two, we need to actually do something about it, and quick, we better actually spend some money supporting a whole lot of external, initiatives to show our support. But then three, let's make sure we have a very clear and honest look at what's happening internally. And I think that that later piece is what is now happening for organizations around taking the real look about what is happening on the inside, and where is the investment to support this for the individuals inside the firm. And I think the reason why that has happened as well is, talk about marketing. I mean, at the end of the day, companies exist to make money as well, but it's a bit of a heightened sense of starting to view your employees as also customers, and just getting a better sense around there is a huge opportunity here to actually work with our people as if they're customers as well. That's a huge asset to us, not just as employees, but see them in a more holistic way, which I believe, fundamentally helps, companies be more commercially successful. And I think probably a very good example of this is Spotify, for example, works with their LGBT community internally to create new products that better connect, with the end customer. Now, that is just a fantastic way to just be holistic in your approach to diversity, because actually you're able to optimize what is unique to you as an organization, who are the people that work for you, to create a better product and experience for your customers, and understand also a segment of your customers in a way that is very personalized. So, I think that is what we are starting to see by some of the best companies and the most innovative companies, where they are, it doesn't seem like it's radical, but it still is radical for a lot of companies, really connecting the dots around, hey, we have something unique here. And in doing that, and in actually working with your people in that way, you actually are, you're creating this more engaged workforce as a result, and still getting better products to market.
What about during this time of pandemic? Something that's been really top of mind for me as a leader is awareness around who I'm connecting with and who I'm not. There was so many organic interactions that happened when you're in person in the workplace that now you're, structured time and all virtual. If you're not regularly in smaller group meetings with everyone on your team, you need to recognize that and take steps to connect with people on an individual level. But as companies scale and they're bigger, the opportunity for that mentoring, those connections to continue happening lessens. And I think that's one of the biggest risks right now, especially around employee engagement and pipeline development. How is Werkin? I mean, technology is the core of what we're seeing, supporting us during this time. I mean, how are you hearing similar things from the companies you're working with, and what steps can we all take to be intentional about ensuring that we don't move backwards in our efforts?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we've certainly had a few panicked calls. So it is a super interesting time. And I think really what we're seeing right now is we've kind of gone through the first phase of this, where really companies were just trying to get the basics in place around how do we just get a good operating environment. And all of the stuff that we thought we had in place is maybe not operating in the way that we thought. So there was a lot of, I think, just coming back to basics and making sure people could do the job. What we're now seeing, though, is companies are certainly having the conversation around, how do we keep our people engaged and feel supported, and, create that sense of belonging. These programs that we were absolutely relying on from a face-to-face perspective are just not something we were going to be able to do, nor can we rely on just, as you mentioned, just the organic, popping into a meeting, running into someone, them being in the line of sight, which, does provide that, that level of support, engagement as well. So, technology is really, super key. And, something we've always thought a lot about is, how do you go deeper on the relationship, after that Zoom call or after that conference, what happens in the in-between moments, which is how we've designed the technology we build. But, what I would say to companies is, you need to move fast. I mean, there's just explosion when it comes to kind of future of work tech anyway. And there has been for the last few years, but now there's kind of, I guess, the mandate, if you like, to use technology to help, general kind of workplace optimization. And a big part of that is going to be able to retain the people that you'd like to retain too, because it's going to become a very competitive environment around top talent, but also ensuring that diverse talent do feel, I guess, supported and loved with where they work. So technology is key to making this work. And, it's looking for those elements, whether it's our tech or someone else's or components of that. Companies really right now need to be thinking about what technology are we using outside of our collaboration tools, which are very much around getting work done. What are we using to make diverse talent, for example, and actually all talent feel very visible inside the organization when there isn't that physical space to naturally enhance it? And then how are we helping them with their overall kind of employee experience, not just in getting work done quickly, but actually what's going into the day-to-day lives? How are you having those other conversations? How are you providing support, which makes it much more around the whole person, their life and what's happening? Because the reality is their workplaces now become home. They've got their partner sitting across from them. They've got kids, they've got dogs. I mean, the world has changed rapidly. So it's starting to think about smartly what you can do and use, which doesn't just speak to that this gets the job done, but actually does make the person feel supported and feel special. And we found that actually looking at other tools which are, specific to achieving those sort of goals are important as well, because you create different environments, safe spaces for a different conversation.
Yeah, I mean, my biggest concern during this time is that, inclusion and equity efforts will slip backwards. Will, in a time of economic downturn and great transition, that companies won't prioritize these efforts in ways that they might have previously done, or the ways that they should. And I know, personally speaking, you're an out and proud executive, and you've done so much to mentor women and the LGBTQ plus communities. What advice do you have for our listeners, especially those from underrepresented groups? How do you stand out? How do you continue to navigate the workplace during this time? How can you bring your full self to work when maybe sometimes that doesn't feel welcomed? And we'd just love to know your thoughts and advice for those that are really navigating this time on an unequal playing field.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. It certainly is a very strange time, but I think it's a time also of change. And firstly, I think it really depends with kind of the employee lens. It does depend on kind of what kind of organization you are working for right now. I mean, usually the go-to group is, the employee resource groups or the business resource groups, where, people do self-organize, and, you can tap into, your LGBT community, for example, inside your organization. But I think really what's important too is to be probably tapping into the community groups that also exist outside of your organization to get the extra support you need, because sometimes you can't get everything you need to navigate life just from the organization you work for either. So I think it's that balance of finding really what you need as an individual, both inside your organization and outside your organization. I think firms generally are wanting to do the best thing, but actually are finding, there's a huge pressure around obviously getting the business operational during this time when there are many variables. So I don't think they're naturally thinking about every single diversity group. So it is about kind of finding a way to own that journey for yourself and self-organize inside an organization where I think, with clear proposals for, wanting to do something, I believe you'll be able to get support. I think probably people are just being pulled in lots of directions at the moment because we have come off a great time where, there has been investment, there is awareness, there has been support programs. Companies are just moving through great change. So I think the self-organization component for you as an individual inside an organization is really important for you to tap into, I should say, and be part of, rather than it be handed to you. Because I think there's an openness to support. It just has to be owned by the individuals and the groups within organizations. And I think, look, as things like, obviously live events happening, it is also finding those virtual events that you can support and be part of, and ensure that actually, where there are budgets that have been put aside, they're still being used for the virtual versions of, say, a Pride event. If you're doing something as well inside your organization, I'd really encourage you to make sure if you're bringing in artists or musicians or creatives generally, and you're tapping into kind of, diverse individuals to do that you're making sure that you also, pay them, and you're finding ways to support those communities that kind of, you have a shared experience with or want to support. I think it's really important right now, as people are personally affected, that you think about how you can, engage and support. It's really about thinking, not just about you as yourself and what you need, but how you also support that community that you're part of. And I think from that, as an individual, you're always going to have really, a better experience.
Yeah, I love all of that advice, specifically around, ensuring companies are supporting the communities in multitude of ways, and paying the talent that they're bringing in and that expertise, which really lends itself to this concept of allies and allyship. What advice do you have for those of us that really want to show up and want to support the LGBTQ plus communities beyond Pride Month, and as allies engaging in Pride Month too? It's for, all people to really celebrate this identity in this time, but I just think it's important that we talk about it going beyond a momentary celebration.
Totally. And look, I think, every day is kind of, Pride for me, but this is an important month, and I think there's real power in thinking about, really where you actually spend your money. And I think something that is really important right now is even thinking about actually buying from small businesses who are LGBT plus owned, and thinking about what you do during Pride Month, and that could be a great way to be an ally who actually puts their money where their mouth is, and offer that support. And there's very easy ways to find out who that is, or if you're thinking about buying a particular service for the company that you work for, you can tap into the likes of NGLCC, which is the National and Gay Lesbian Chamber of Commerce here in the States, and find out who are these businesses that I can actually support. And I think that is a great way to show your support, to think about actually who you're spending your money with. And as we know, diverse communities are often more effective during downturn. This kind of, and from my perspective, makes it even more important to do that.
All of that advice is so on point, and I love it. And I encourage our listeners to really be intentional about where you spend your money and how you support communities that you ally to. It's important that we do that, and that we really are intentional about that. Hayley, I wanted to end with a quick lightning round. It's a great way to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm going to ask you some questions and ask that you respond in one sentence or less. Are you an introvert or an extrovert?
Extrovert.
What's your favorite day of the week?
I think it's Friday. Fridays are about closing out with a beer and, life is good on a Friday.
We're very aligned on that. Early bird or night owl?
Look, I used to be a night owl, but I've slapped myself into submission and trained myself to be a morning person over the years because it just works better for life and travel. So I've become a morning person.
Who's your dream dinner guest?
I think Ellen DeGeneres. I mean, as far as that, she's the icon of kind of the lesbian world, and I wouldn't mind having dinner with her and her wife, Portia de Rossi, who's obviously an Australian. So I'm sure we'd all get along.
I'm sure you would. What's your pet peeve?
I don't really. I'm trying to think about it. I think I've had many pet peeves that have come up during this pandemic around kind of the things we'd had to wash and be careful. So, I mean, I hate having to wear a mask and gloves. So I'm just going to say that, I'll say that.
But where do you live?
Live in Chelsea in New York City.
Okay. Yes. I'm in Brooklyn. So here it is. I know you can't walk outside your front door without, full garb. So it is a big transition. Absolutely.
Yeah. And running in a mask as well is a bit difficult, but I think it improves your level of fitness. I'm believing all the hype. You train in a mask, you improve your aerobic activities.
What's your favorite recent read?
I just finished actually Becoming Nobody by Ram Dass. I think it's an excellent way to just have a think about your life and the world right now.
Well, I'm going to pick that up. What is your favorite self-care practice?
I think it is actually 8 hours sleep and being sort of quite consistent about that, and also taking a liquefied vitamin C every day, which I ramped up during the beginning of this pandemic. And I just believe it's kind of giving me a bit of a healthy edge right now.
Well, Hayley, thank you so much for joining us today for the podcast. I can't tell you how much I enjoyed this conversation. If our listeners want to learn more about Werkin, how would they find you and learn more about the company?
So you can just go to getwerkin.com, so getwerkin.com, and that's where everything is about what we do. You can find me on LinkedIn at Hayley Sudbury, and I'm always happy to connect with people who have a shared mission in helping change, essentially, I guess, who runs the world.
Excellent. Hayley, thank you for the important work you're doing, and it was great to talk to you on the podcast this week.
Thanks for having me, Kristy.
Thanks so much for listening to Ellevate. If you like what you hear, help a girl out. Subscribe to the Ellevate podcast on iTunes, give us 5 stars, and share your review. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at Ellevate NTWK, that's Ellevate Network, and become a member. You can learn all about membership and all the great things that Ellevate Network is doing at our website, www.ellevatenetwork.com. That's ELLEVATE network.com. And special thanks to our producer, Catherine Heller. She rocks. And to our voiceover artist, Rachel Griesinger. Thanks so much, and join us next week.
Save big on select Whirlpool and Maytag appliances at Lowe's. Right now, get deals on top items like the Whirlpool stainless steel kitchen suite and Maytag Pet Pro laundry pair that removes 5 times more pet hair. Plus, get free delivery when you spend $396 or more. Shop appliances for less in-store or online at Lowe's. Comparing normal cycle with Pet Pro filter and option to cycle using traditional agitator without Pet Pro filter and option. Results will vary based on fabric and type of pet hair. Exclusions apply. See Lowe's.com for details. Offer ends 3/8.